I call the January 5th meeting of the Henry County School Board to order. At this time, Ms. Hatchett, will you proceed with a roll call?
Mr. Alker?
Here.
Mrs. Durbin? Here. Mrs. Flanagan?
Here.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mrs. Whitland? Here.
Our first item this evening is to elect a school board chair. So at this time, I open the floor for nominations of school board chair.
I would like to nominate Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Alker. Mr. Martin's been nominated for the board chair. Do I have any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, I will close the nominations and call for a vote. All those in favor of Mr. Martin serving as the school board chair, please raise your hand. Thank you. Mr. Martin, congratulations on becoming the new school board chairman.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you all very much, and it looks like the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So, with that said, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mrs.
Second.
Flanagan. We have a second by Mr. Alker. Give it a second for Mrs. Hatchett. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Any opposed? Okay. Ayes have it. Carries. All right. Well, we want to welcome the many visitors we have this evening, and I also want to especially say a welcome to our two new student board members, Hunter Goad and Layton Cochran. I wanted to thank you both for being here, and we're excited to have you. It's been a topic for a while, and we've had quite a few members very excited to see you join us, and we're looking forward to your input and your contributions, so thank you again. With that said, the next item is the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would, please stand, and Mr. Alker, if you would, the invocation.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this day that you have given to us, for the blessings. And now, Lord, as we gather as the school board of Henry County, we pray for your wisdom and strength. Amen.
Mr. Gradley, if you would lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You all may be seated. Well, the next item on the agenda is the election of a vice chairman. So with that, I open the floor to any nominations for vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Hart. Go ahead.
I nominate Mr. Ben Gravely.
All right, we have a nomination for Mr. Gravely. Do we have any other nominations or second? All right. With that, I would say that the nominations are closed. Call for a vote for Mr. Gravely to serve as the vice chairman for the coming year. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. The one abstention. All right.
Oh, will I vote for myself?
Well, you can, but, you know.
I just make it unanimous.
All right. Congratulations, Mr. Gravely. You are now the vice chairman.
Thank you.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is with, I believe, Mrs. Strayer.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Annually, we approve at our organizational meeting a designee to serve in my absence at these meetings and other such meetings. So tonight, it is recommended that Dr. David Scott serve in that position.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any question? All right. If none, do we have a motion regarding that?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mrs. Flanagan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gravely. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? I don't see any. So, ayes have it unanimously. The next item appears to be the adoption of the code of conduct. Again, Mrs. Strayer, Dr. Strayer, sorry.
Again, at our organizational meeting, we ask you all to review the code of conduct for board members, and including in this packet is the code of conduct that we'll ask you all to sign if you indeed approve this. So it is my recommendation that the board take action and adopt the code of conduct.
All right. Any discussion? Anyone with a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the code of conduct.
Okay. Motion-
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hardy, second by Mr. Hawker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it unanimously. And that brings us to the school board meeting schedule. Dr. Strayer.
Yes, we have proposed a schedule for the school board meetings that is aligned with what we have followed in the past several years. But obviously, this is up to the board to decide, to be consistent, to let the public know for the year when we will meet, and denote which moving meetings to do the holidays. But at this time, there is a recommendation. So if the board has any questions about the dates and the times for meeting, please let me know. And we need an approval of meetings for the entire year.
So, any discussion?
There's going to be some discussion.
I had a feeling.
Go ahead, Mr.
No, you go.
Well,
You said we're on
we
the
do
same
have
page.
student council on our board now, so it would be very difficult for them to be able to leave school to come to our meeting. So I'd like to propose that our meetings are at 6 o'clock for the months that we are in school, and for the summer months, we can do 9 o'clock meetings if.
All right. So you want to make that in the motion?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Flanagan. With that, all those in favor of the motion to have the meetings during the school year at 6 p.m. and then the ones out of session in the morning at 9 a.m., please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right.
I have something else, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, I would like to bring up. I would like to propose a motion to move the 6 p.m. meetings to 5:30 p.m.
Okay. So we have a motion to have 5:30 as the start time. You want to do that for the meetings since we adopted the?
Correct.
Okay, so for the evening meetings, 5:30 start time. All right, so we have a motion to that effect. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Mrs. Whitlow. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Oh, okay, but we can discuss.
I'm just, I mean, is everybody okay? I mean, the workers, people that work, are you guys okay with that? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
All right, well, okay, so we have a motion for the 5:30, we have a second. To reconfirm, we will do the vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, any opposed? You may raise your right hand now. Okay. Ayes have it. So 5:30 start time during the school year. 9 a.m. for the summer meetings. Okay. Looks like that finishes the organizational portion of the meeting, which then brings us to the regular meeting. And public comment, it looks like we don't currently have anyone who has signed up for that, so we'll move on to awards and recognitions. And I guess you pulling multiple duties here, Mrs. Hatchett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This evening, we have 2 recognitions for you. As you know, each January, we recognize the hard work and dedication of our principals by complying with either a governor's proclamation or the VSBA resolution to honor Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week. That has not yet been issued for the current year, 2023. So I'm going to read one to you from last year, but we will in our schools be recognizing our principals. We encourage you to also take the time to visit your schools and to visit the principals there and let them know how supportive we are and how grateful we are for everything that they do.
And again, this is just for acknowledgement. Whereas school principals work cooperatively to direct, develop, and inspire all members of the school staff and student body, and to communicate effectively with parents to engage them in the learning process. And whereas principals serve as educational leaders responsible for managing the policies, regulations, and procedures necessary to ensure a safe and effective learning environment for all students in Virginia's public and private schools. And whereas principals and teachers are entrusted with the opportunity and the responsibility of guiding, directing, nurturing, mentoring, and imparting knowledge to our children while they are at school. And whereas principals must work collaboratively with teachers, staff, students, parents, and the community at large to proactively prepare students to be self-reliant and productive citizens. And whereas Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week is an opportunity to recognize the hard work of Virginia school principals and to recognize the importance of principals in ensuring that every child has access to a quality education, we will therefore recognize Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week in our schools during the month of January. And then the second item I have are two groups of students to be recognized. And our first group, no pun intended, is the FIRST Robotics team that started out of Magna Vista. And we have their mentor, Phyllis Mead, here with us this evening. She's going to share a little bit with you about what that group accomplished. And then we have some certificates to share with them, as is our tradition. But also, they earned some medals. So she's going to share their medals with them this evening as well.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Henry County Public Schools has put science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as an essential part of our curriculum and instruction. To ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to build on this foundation of engineering and robotics that they learned in elementary school, we are now having this club in high school, so I'm very excited for these students. The FTC program, to give you a little bit of information, has a long-standing reputation for involving students in community service projects that broaden the students' understanding of critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and collaboration to reach a common goal for the good of the community. I would also like to thank Boxley Materials that gave us a generous donation to help aid in this project. This year, even though this was our very first time working with these students, they were able to go off to competition and represent Henry County in a wonderful way. They were able to get 2 awards. One was the Connect Award, and that was for citizenship and having a team portfolio and just being team players. The second one was for the Motivate Award, and that was for being team ambassadors for that first program, and also explaining individual contributions from each of their members. So there was a lot of hard work that went into this program after school, and these students should really be commended.
I'll be calling the names of each participant for the record, and students, as your name is called, if you'll come forward, Ms. Mead is going to share your certificate and your medal with you. Connor Watring, Mohammed Salim, Ariana Bachman, Dua Umar, Abigail Jimenez Ramirez, Eden Trainum, Grant Lane, Cadence Dillard, Eric Callie, Michael Gervais, and you guys are all going to just stand right up front and let us take all your pictures. So it's your paparazzi. Congratulations. You're good. You can go all the way up.
Yeah, just watch your step.
Now remember, you have to stand still and smile until everybody's trying to take a picture. Okay, that's the hard part. All right, is everybody ready? Additionally, we have a group of students from Magna Vista who have been added to the regional football recognitions, and we want to share their names for the record. I'm not sure that any of them were able to join us this evening, but I'll be reading their names. And so if you are present this evening, if you'll come forward when your name is called. JJ Springs, Ethan Stockton, Jameer Hairston, Jonte Hairston, Simeon Moore, and Caleb Lynch.
Looks like next on the agenda, and congratulations again, and very impressive work. The information agenda, which includes the FY 2024 budget update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This evening I have a brief budget update for you. This time of year we are going through our superintendent's cabinet meetings. So the slides that you will see are the same slides that we present to the members of the various cabinets for the superintendent cabinets. To begin with, the total amount of state funding for the upcoming year, fiscal year 24, is remarkably close to what it was in the current year, FY 23. You'll notice that that is a large increase from FY 22, and that is owed in large part to the influx of federal funding on sort of the late side of pandemic relief. For the local match, you can see that that same kind of increase has been gradual from our Board of Supervisors, and it will go up about $600,000 from the local government in the upcoming budget. When we plan for our expenditures and so forth, we generally start out assuming that there will be level funding from the appropriating body. If we do that, we see our total budget will probably come in right around $101 million, and that is assuming that the local dollars stay the same, which would in fact show a slight decrease in the local leeway funds or the discretionary funding from the Board of Supervisors. We hope that that isn't the case. We hope that there's more funding there to meet all of our needs. This slide just shows more graphically a depiction of where the money has been. As you can see in the gray regions there, a slight reduction in FY 23 and an assumed level funding in FY 24. And you can see in those blue regions the increase that we have received from the state in state aid. And then again, just another way to show kind of the same picture there, that if we assume that the funding will be level from the Board of Supervisors, you can see kind of how that looks with the discretionary funding. On the expenditure side of the discussion, in the last 3 years that are presented in front of you, you can see that our dollars have been spent in remarkably the same way each year. One of the percentages that does not show up in there, and to the new school board members there, our student board members, our money, it has to be expended in certain expenditure categories, and you see those listed there. What these percentages don't show is that from every dollar that's up there, 70% of that is actually in salaries. So when we talk about a $101 million budget, right off the bat, about $70 million of that goes to paying the salaries for the different employees in the county. But if we were to have an extra column up there for FY 24, we can just about guarantee that those percentages will shake out the same way. In the past several years, we have undertaken to bring our teacher pay scale into the most competitive position possible, and that has been largely a task of making sure that the teachers and all employees on that teacher scale are given the years of service step increase that it is basically promised to them when they sign up to be a teacher. As the board knows, in 2010, when the recession hit, those step increases were harder and harder to come by. There were a lot of years when we weren't able to give people on that teaching scale that same step. As you see on the slide in front of you, we have recovered those steps throughout the various years, and by the percentages on top of those steps, we have also increased the amount of pay at each of those steps by the percentages represented up there. So in the current year, fiscal year 23, teachers are enjoying a 3-step increase in addition to at least a 5% increase. The General Assembly for fiscal year 24 has said that we need to at least achieve a 5% increase. And at this date, our target right now is to give that 1 step and then an additional 5% on top of that. We're hopeful that we might be able to do better than that, but that is the target for right now. When we speak of teachers, I know some members of the board like to see where our teachers load up on those various steps in the pay scale. And as you can see here, employees currently on steps 1 through 3 make up about 95 employees on those steps. And this includes teachers, ITRTs, guidance counselors, school media specialists, and so forth. If you scan all the way to the right of the illustration, you see our top step on the scale, step 28, and we have 75 employees either on that step or moving to that step in the next year. And as Dr. Boone likes to point out in those cabinet meetings, that is a good indication that we do a good job of retaining our teachers once they're in-house. When we look at our classified scale, and this is everyone from the mechanics to the facilities and maintenance staff to school secretaries and paraprofessionals and employees of all sorts of different shapes and sizes, we have done the same thing to increase their pay over the years to recover from what we refer to as the lean years when we weren't able to give some raises. Their increases have been more percentage-wise than step-wise. But as you can see, that same trajectory there. In the last couple years, we've been able to give them 3 steps each in each of those 2 years, plus percentage increases. And the General Assembly directive would also be to give them at least a 5% increase for those SOQ supported positions. Everyone knows that drivers are in high demand and in short supply right now. We're doing everything that we can to recruit and to retain drivers. Historically, even when times have been tough, we have found a way to give our drivers a percentage increase. If it was noted on the last couple slides where we had a year, fiscal year 21, where we weren't able to give classified staff or licensed staff an increase, bus drivers, even through that year, received a 3.5% increase. In the current year, they are receiving a 10% increase. So next year, or in the upcoming fiscal year, we hope to do just as well. If the target is 5% for everyone else, the target will be 7% for bus drivers. But again, we hope we can improve upon that. And then administrators have intentionally been on a slower increase. This is, generally speaking, our higher paid professionals. So the increases that predate this illustration had been very meager. Some years not giving any kind of increase at all. Some years giving a 0.5% or 1%. In fact, it is noted there in the note above the illustration, the 5% increase that they got in FY22 was the first time that they had seen an increase of more than 2% since fiscal year 2013. Last year, we were able to give administrators a 7% increase. And as they are standards of quality positions, we will be looking to give them at least a 5% increase in the upcoming year. This is a snapshot of some of the selected steps on our salary scale. If we assume that there will be a 5% increase, this would take starting pay for new teachers to $47,814. As you can see there, if you jump down the line to step 5, after 5 years of service, our teachers would be over $50,000 pay. This remains an extremely competitive pay scale, and we're hopeful that we're able to bring this home. Where the money is coming from, in the current operating budget, the state set aside $1.8 million and the local government set aside $500,000 to achieve the increases that we got in the current budget. For next year, the state has moved some money around. $3.8 million had been in school construction funds. That money and a little bit more has moved into the compensation supplement. So the state is giving a little over $4 million for it, and this would put the local government share at $1.1 million. So all told, we would have about $5.1 million to achieve these compensation increases. And I know when we talk about percentages, it's a little hard to contextualize how much money that is for each of those groups. So on this illustration, you can see that if we stuck at one step and a 5% increase for our teachers, that would be a little bit over $3 million of the, basically $5 million that we're talking about spending on compensation increases. For the classified staff, somewhere around $800,000. Transportation increase is under $500,000 to do that. You can kind of see how each of those categories dwindles there a little bit. But making sure that we make sure that every category of employees gets at least that raise is well within the confines of that compensation budget. Some of the other costs that we're talking about in the budget as we develop it, some of the things that we're discussing with those superintendent's cabinets and with board members is we are anticipating to need an increase in our fuel line and transportation. For years and years and years, we were able to just kind of peg that at about $900,000. With certain world events, we're understanding the need to take that up a little bit higher. And it's also how we have budgeted for new school bus purchases, as using unexpended fuel costs at the end of the year to turn around and turn those into buses. We're hoping to include funding for buses to purchase those on the front end rather on the back end in the upcoming budget. The item that is struck through on that list, we had talked also at the beginning of this school year about the need to increase professional development for our bus drivers and our driver's aides. And a lot of times they're dealing with student situations on the buses that our teachers are well trained in dealing with in the classroom, but drivers and driver's aides haven't had the same kind of classroom management type training. When the board took action a couple months ago to adopt the calendar that shortened the number of school days, what we're able to do is to keep the calculation for salaries and so forth still based around 180-day a year, but by going 176 days in the upcoming calendar, that essentially pays for about 4 days of training for our drivers and driver's aides. From the instruction and administration, health and attendance side, every year we talk about the possible increase of positions, just depending on what student needs are and what different programming needs are. So there's still some things that are being fleshed out right now. And then as the board is aware, we are involved in a compensation study right now. And so as we await the results of that, there may be some other fine-tuning with compensation packages. If we turn our attention then to the capital improvement plan, we know that every year this is a topic of great interest. We still have some marquee projects on the horizon, and the caveat for all of this is that we're still awaiting the completion of the comprehensive facilities assessment. In about 2010, 2011, we had our last study completed, and that has driven the capital improvement plan since that time. So what we like to do this time of year is, as we're discussing plans for the upcoming budget, also to keep reminding the board that we're awaiting information on that to kind of direct what's going on inside our buildings as we look at other new possible projects. To highlight a few, the Bassett HVAC project, the board is well aware of the work we've put into the roof. There still remains to be some work done underneath the roof, making sure that the lighting and the ceilings and so forth are up to par. There's been long discussions about field houses to serve both high schools. The board is aware that we have a commitment at Laurel Park for the HVAC replacement. Those are rooftop units. We want to get those done as the actual roof is reaching its expiration date, so we can take care of all the HVAC work before we start spending money on replacing the roof. For elevator installations, we have 3 elementary schools that are multi-story schools. And although we're still in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, we know that it's high time to address those issues also. The board has heard over a few times in the past several months about the need for our track repair and or replacement projects. So that is also something that we'll get some insight on from the architects as that facilities assessment is done. We want everybody to be aware that that is a project that is on our radar. And it, like others, will just kind of depend on where the board's priorities lie. Same holds true with the artificial turf projects that have been proposed for both high schools. The CCL parking lot repair is comparatively a drop in the bucket compared to some of these other things, but we'll have more information about what needs to happen over there. And then the last thing that has made this slide, and this slide unfortunately isn't an exhaustive list, but also some upgrades to be discussed at the athletic campus at Magna Vista to increase handicap accessibility and just some of the amenities that are not at that campus right now. And then to be even a little bit more informed on all this, as we project into next year, what kind of funding we'll have available. We know that the money that the state provided for school construction is money that we have applied throughout our division on renovations, but we won't be getting that big lump sum from the state in the upcoming budget. So unfortunately, our facilities budget will be a little bit leaner, somewhat like it had been about 4 years ago. On the other hand, we have the 1% sales tax that had passed, and we have a growing account there. So the board will have some decisions to make about how to apply that money, if and when to undertake projects that can be funded by that. So as we go through the superintendent's cabinets, that's one of the things that we are being sure to collect feedback on, to hear from each group about where their priorities lie so that we can come back in February and share that information with the school board. And last slide for me, and then I'll be out of the way. As the governor came out with his budget recommendations and proposals in mid-December, the General Assembly will reconvene and discuss that, and hopefully we'll have an answer about how everything settles out as we get into the spring. But a couple of the things that are dangling out there right now is increased funding for one math specialist position and one reading specialist position, and forgive me if that's supposed to be an and or an or proposition. The governor has also mentioned a 1% retention bonus, teacher pay for performance, and that's criteria that is still very murky right now, and we're really waiting to see how that settles out, and there's a lot of people betting that won't pass. And then the teacher recruitment incentive, which is still lacking some definition, but the spirit of it is to make sure that the people who are with us now and the people we can bring on board for the rest of this year, we can incentivize their return. If the board has any questions right now, I'll be happy to try to field those, and Dr. Boone is here also. But that's the presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much. Now, any questions, discussion? I understand that was a lot of information.
Well, I guess, not necessarily a question, but I know we talked about 2 board members being on the budget committee, so we can kind of sit down and decipher all this information. I assume we're going to, at some point, make that decision. I
would say that's definitely something we've done at least the last 4 or 5 years. So, and I think it's very important. So, and I know you've done a great job of it as well. So certainly, if anyone's wanting to continue, I don't recall the timeline, if this was the meeting that we normally did that, or if it was the next, or what precise.
If I may, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman.
Yes.
I believe that having that person in place by the end of the next meeting would be just as appropriate as having it this evening.
Okay.
We'll get through our cabinet meetings and then have some feedback to present so that
Okay.
those two can dig in.
I just didn't want to put anybody on the spot, like, oh, you're it, But, well, thank you very much for bringing that up, Mr. Go. And thank you. I think, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. So we can take those out, or we can approve them as a block. Up to you all. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion, and we have a second by Mrs. Flanagan. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Ayes have it. So next, it appears we have the approval of the 2023 legislative agenda. Dr. Strayer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The responsibilities of the board are vast. However, one of the greatest responsibilities is to ensure that lawmakers understand the needs of localities. So as board members, I'm asking you tonight to approve the 2023 legislative agenda to ensure that the General Assembly is aware of the needs of Henry County Schools specifically. So to point out a few things that are on the actual legislative agenda that you've had time to review is the fact that we continue to need financial support. Yes, we are not sure the status of reversion. However, we would like to still continue to say that we need the support of legislation to allow Henry County Schools to benefit from the lower composite index if reversion happens and the two entities become one. Additionally, any mandates that are passed by the General Assembly, we would want full funding of all those educational mandates. Also, we know the importance of broadband for all of our students, and we need to continue to push for rural areas to have broadband. With academic supports, it's very important that we understand what the targets are and how to ensure growth for our students and that they are successful worldwide. NAEP is a recent marker that has been used, and we want to know specifically what markers will be used and how we continue to focus on student growth. We are proponents of the entire accreditation system and accountability, with the exception of the chronic absentee model that currently exists. We would like for that to be reviewed and use a different marker. And we continue to request financial support to ensure mental health for all of our students is being addressed, and that we are able to provide the counseling and the support. And we have many partners that are wonderful, including our own staff members, but we want to reiterate to the General Assembly the importance of the funding in all of those areas. And in Henry County, for years, we've experienced staff shortage. And of course, we know it was exacerbated by the pandemic, and across the state, others felt that same shortage of employees. And we commend everyone who's working so hard to help the school systems attract and retain teachers, staff members, as Dr. Scott just went through, our efforts and this board's efforts to ensure that we can attract and retain high-quality professionals does not go unnoticed. But we want to continue to say that we need supports of short and long-term strategies to address the teacher shortage. And we know that one of the main components that we have seen over the years is the fact that the raises that have come over the last couple of years has played a positive role in that attraction and retention, as many of our staff members have told us. So we want to continue to maintain and receive that funding from the General Assembly. So tonight I ask you to approve the legislative agenda and to also provide any comments or feedback or additions to our legislative agenda before we pass it on.
Well, thank you, Dr. Strayer. I will point out that the session is scheduled to start really, in the next few days. So I believe it's the beginning of next week. So any questions, comments on the agenda as presented?
When I read through it, I was good with it.
So who do we direct this to?
We actually emailed it to our legislators that represent our area. And then, of course, there are many meetings that I am in where we do have scheduled meetings where different legislators come, even some that don't represent Henry County. And we're able to talk to them. Sometimes legislators actually call and ask our opinion. But yes, as board members, when you attend the Capitol Conference and you can have time to speak, that's why I definitely recommend that any board member who wants to attend the Capitol Conference or has time to reach out, any staff member that has time to reach out to legislators and let them know. We definitely do send it by email and by, Ms. Hatchett sends it by traditional mail.
Okay. I'm just curious if we ever get any feedback. Well, I've attended a Capitol Conference once and did have an opportunity to have some conversations. So, in a while, maybe I need to do it again.
Well, we would gladly welcome you, and I would also say that I know that it also gets to VSBA lobbyists and others. And I will say certainly, especially last year when we added the referendum component to the legislative agenda, that I had people come and reach out to me about that. So that's certainly, you know, with reversion, with a lot of these things that have caught attention to our area. I would say the last few years I've heard more about what is and is not in our agenda. And I will piggyback on that, and I'll say it again later. I'll definitely encourage anybody to go to the Capitol Conference, go meet with our legislators, indicate how important this is. But if there's any other questions, comments? Okay, do I have a motion on the agenda as presented? Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Whitlow, second by Ms. Flanagan. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? Ayes have it. And then it looks like the next item would be the approval of the 2023-2024 high school program of studies. Dr. Durham.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Annually, you all approve our high school course offerings by adopting our high school program of studies. The program of studies outlines all the courses that we offer and provides the descriptions and general policies about the high school program and our instruction. There were a few minor adjustments to this program of studies. Those changes include expanding some opportunities at the Career Academy. We've added the Advanced Equine Science class and the Veterinary Science 2 class. We've added some opportunities for students to participate in a welding program at PNHCC, and we've also added a Spanish class for fluent speakers who are fluent Spanish speakers and native Spanish speakers. We've included the attachments where you can see all the list of the changes that were made, a strike-through version, and then a final clean, completed version. Once it's approved, we will send it out electronically. Mrs. Hatchett helps us with that. We send it through Messenger to all parents and guardians. Paper copies are made available. If parents need a paper copy, we also have it translated in Spanish as well. It's recommended that the board approve the 23-24 high school program of studies.
Thank you. Any questions?
I think it is great that the welding program is going to make it. That's great.
I'm excited about that. And what I like about that too, Mrs. Whitlow, is our students start in our program at the Career Academy, and then they can transition right into the PNH program and then come out with certifications. And we know we need welders.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
And the sky's the limit for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I want to ask, because we had this discussion some time ago. I looked through the program of studies, and I noticed we have the Small Animal 1 and Small Animal 2 course, and I know we had some conversation about Small Animal 2. When I read the description, we're talking about grooming small animals, but there were some legalities that we had to make sure that we address. All right, so my thing is, if we're going to approve this program of studies, have we met all the legalities that we needed to make sure that's, you know.
I will, since Mr. Miller is approaching the podium, I will let him answer.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you. Yes, we have, Mr. Gravely. We have done a lot of research, talked to a lot of school divisions. Mrs. Milner and Dr. Boone and I have had many conversations about where we need to be and what we need to make sure happens so our students will have this great opportunity. So we are in full compliance, and we will continue to monitor and grow as we move forward. And as far as welders are concerned, I'm a product of a welder, so they can make great money. And those students on the robotics team, I can't wait to see them at the Career Academy. So, any other questions?
No, that was one of them. Spoke with Baycorp about that. What do we approve the program of studies for high school?
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second by Mrs. Whitlow. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Ayes have it. Then we go right back with the approval of the 2023-2024 middle school program study.
Thank you. And just like you all just did for the high school, you'll also review the middle school course offerings by adopting our middle school program of studies. There were no adjustments made to this program and the courses that we offer in the middle school for this year. You also have the same attachments in your packet as well. It includes the strike-through version, an edited version, and the final version of the 23-24 program of studies for Middle School. It's recommended that the board approve the 23-24 middle school program of studies.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, if there are none, do I have a motion?
Move that we approve that middle school programs.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardy. We have a second by Mr. Alker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Ayes have it unanimously. Then we move on to the approval to award contracts for fiber optic and copper network cabling. Ms. Fulcher.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Continuing with infrastructure upgrades, network wiring is sometimes required for various projects throughout the district. These upgrades provide students and staff a more stable network for the purpose of accessing and facilitating instruction and conducting administrative duties efficiently. A request for proposal was solicited jointly by the Technology and Facilities and Maintenance Departments to establish a contract for fiber optic and copper network cabling equipment and services on an as-needed basis for Henry County Public Schools. A panel of 5 members reviewed the proposals considering several factors, including experience and qualifications, geographic location, references, price, and insurance. As a result, the committee felt it was in the best interest of Henry County to contract with all 3 firms, Blankenship Phone and Data Cabling, VCS Fire and Security Incorporated, and Jameson Electric Incorporated. This contract may also be used for additional network connections through a mutual agreement for up to a maximum of 4 additional 1-year terms. It is recommended that the school board approve the contract for fiber optic and copper network cabling be awarded to the above listed firms on an as-needed basis. It is also recommended that the division be authorized to exercise subsequent renewals in accordance with the terms of the contracts. The fiscal impact is up to $100,000 annually from the technology budget and up to $100,000 annually from the operations and maintenance budget.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? All right, if we do not, do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Alker. We have a second by Mrs. Flanagan. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Ayes have it unanimously. Thank you very much. And it looks like the next item is the appropriation of additional funds to facilities.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Per the joint resolution between the Henry County Board of Supervisors and the School Board of Henry County Public Schools, the school division is requesting the reappropriation of $549,342 of unexpended funds from the FY22 budget. The reappropriation of the FY22 unexpended funds or carry forward balance is requested to help cover the cost of the following projects: the Law Park Middle School rooftop heating and cooling system project, and items listed in the capital improvement project. It is recommended the school board approve the additional appropriation of the above mentioned projects and forward to the Board of Supervisors. I do want to point out that the Law Park Middle School HVAC project, that's a project that's also supported by our Corona State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund grant. That grant is about $1.4 million, but it does require 100% local match for that project going through December of 2024. So this would take a piece out of that local requirement.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mrs. Flanagan. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. Gravely. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Ayes have it. All right. So the next item is the approval to accept school security equipment grant. Mr. Scott.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Virginia Department of Education has awarded Henry County Public Schools a total of $250,000 for the 2022 School Security Equipment Grant Program, authorized by the 2013 General Assembly. These funds are approved for purchases and installation of an updated surveillance system at Bassett High School and upgrades to the exterior door locks for all 4 secondary schools. Security services from Glade Hill, Virginia, and Sabar from Axton, Virginia, both hold current contracts with the division and would be performing this work. And so it's recommended that the school board approve the school security equipment grant.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the school facilities and security equipment grant.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Mrs. Flanagan. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just curious, surveillance system, what are we talking about?
All right, so I'll refresh your memory a little bit. We just did an upgrade to our surveillance system at Magna Vista this past
Right.
year. And so we wanted to kind of work out the bugs. It gives us a lot more analytics, if you will, when you're doing searches for throughout the building, plus a little more coverage. And so now we're moving that same system to Bassett High School as well, so they would match.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, so, okay. All right. Does that include
that
my bathroom?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. We, the committee, this does not, no, sir, to answer that question, it does not include that piece. But the committee did meet with both firms that responded to that. And prior to break, we visited a site that had one of some of those sensors on it as well, another site. And so we're ready to make a recommendation. We were just waiting for break to be over, and now we're ready to make this recommendation. So.
Any further discussion? All right. Well, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of approving as presented, please raise your right hand. Ayes have it. So, let's see. We are up to the superintendent's monthly report. Dr. Shea.
As we move into the new year, we are going to reflect back for a moment on December of 2022.
This edition of Highlights features events from around the division during the month of December. In the area of high-quality instruction, 4th grade scientists at Axton are making it a habit to regularly work on scientific investigation. The students did an experiment to see how different temperatures affect the color of brewed tea recently. To add another layer, they combined it with Virginia studies, and the presentations that they gave were letters ignored by King George, leading to the American Revolution on old paper using the brewed tea. Drury Mason students have been getting into the holiday spirit through some hands-on STEM activities. 5th grade students made circuit trees, reviewing their 4th grade science SOLs, and the 4th grade robotics club had an open house for families to see their club projects. Meadowview kindergartners focused on math, science, social studies, and reading skills during a month-long gingerbread-themed unit. Students read versions of the Gingerbread Man story, sequenced story events, graphed eating a gingerbread man, discussed the 5 senses along with other activities. The unit allowed students to participate in activities related to kindergarten SOLs and have the opportunity for hands-on learning in the classroom. Mount Olivet 4th graders used Oreos to show moon phases during the month of December. Rich Acres students have been learning and collaborating to complete various tasks in their classrooms, such as math task cards, moon phases in science, and reading comprehension practice for National Brownie Day. At Sandville, Mrs. Williams had books wrapped and under the tree in December. Each day, a student chose a present to unwrap, and Ms. Williams did a read aloud and discussed the book with her students. On one particular day, the students decorated sweater cookies in accordance with the theme of the story. In the area of safe and innovative learning, Carver students participated in PBIS Candy Cane Olympics to celebrate their positive achievements for the past quarter. Students had turns at the Christmas Cup Stack, Santa Candy Walk, Snowball Toss, Craft Station, Freeze Dance, Candy Cane Relay, Snowman Stack, Reindeer Ring Toss, Holiday Would You Rather, Pass the Present, and Holiday Bingo. In the area of family and community engagement, Ms. Leghorn's EL students and families were invited for a night of food, fun, and fellowship as they celebrated their culture at Campbell Court in December. Each student chose from the Hispanic noteworthy artists of Frida or Picasso to explore. They dressed as those artists, read books in both English and Spanish about the artists, and practiced reading strategies to help bridge the gap between English and their native language. To wrap up the event, everyone became the artist for the night while painting portraits in their chosen style. Laurel Park Beta students recently worked after school completing a community project by making blankets for a local warming shelter. Students worked together to carefully cut and tie 15 blankets that were donated to this important establishment. Congratulations to Magna Vista High School Warrior Tech students who won the Yovaso contest, helping convey the importance of wearing a seatbelt through video. CCL students recently enjoyed a visit with Patrick and Henry Community College representatives Shalira Morrison, who spoke with students about career options, the Seed Fund, and Patrick and Henry Community College. Congratulations to Henry County Public Schools, Henry County Parks and Rec, holiday card winners. Representatives from each school participating earned a prize, and the overall winner for the county earned the opportunity to have her card shared across the community. We are eager to see the inspiration 2023 brings.
Anyone have any questions about any of the superintendent's report? I'll be happy to answer those.
Well, if there are none, that brings us to matters from the board. And normally I would start on the end with our student school board members, but I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot quite like that. So I'll actually start with, if you don't mind, Mrs. Flanagan, do you have any matters for the board?
I just want to thank our teachers and our principals, and hope you had a great holiday season. And I hope the rest of the year goes good, and our budget is on the top, and we're doing a good job.
Thank you. Mr. Alker?
Nothing.
Nothing? All right.
Nothing.
Then I'll pass on. Mr.
Go right
Gravely.
ahead, yes.
No, I got something to say right
Sure, go ahead.
No, I've been approached over the last couple of months and asked some questions. And I know we all know how mental health plays a big part in not only our schools, but schools across this country with students. And I was asked, what do we do to address the mental health needs of our students? And so I'm asking our staff members, what do we do to address the mental health needs, or even provide resources for parents that are struggling with how to address this issue with their kids? And like I said, I think all of us know that this is a major problem. It's a major problem.
Yes, Mr. Bradley, that is an issue that deeply concerns all of us, and it's not just students, as you said, it's adults as well. And so there are many staff members here who have a hand in this. I would say, because Ms. Hatchett works with, come on up, Mr. Dr. Woods. Ms. Hatchett works with community members that have worked to put out the information outlines and put those around the schools. I'm sure our student members maybe can speak to anonymous phone numbers they can call, because there are different avenues to reach all students. However, as administrators, we're trained and we have conversations with parents. And also, we're very fortunate to have highly trained school counselors. And Dr. Woods here, he works directly with the school counselors, so I'll let him speak to some of the things that they do.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. To answer that question, we do have information that we send out. Like Ms. Hatchett, she sends out weekly announcements, which will contain different information, different things in the community. For parents, we actually have a monthly counselor newsletter that comes out of my office that goes directly to all of our school counselors, which includes a lot of different resources and strategies pertaining to also students, but also parents and families. It also includes information that we get directly from the state as well to give us guidance. On our counselor's email signature, for example, it has information if someone is reaching out to them in a moment of crisis, let's say after hours, it has contact information on who they need to call or even text to respond immediately. And then we actually do have information that's developed in a part of our crisis manual. That is information, like I said, to help us respond to families and parents. That's some information that we use as needed, and it's available to all of our administrators and counselors.
And I will add, like, you know, I was going to say with Mr. Scott and crisis that's been going on for years, and Mrs. Hatchett and the things that we're doing with Piedmont Community Service, and she can speak to some of that if she would like. But Mrs. Landon also, you know, yes, some sure would reach out to counselors, and then their parents would come in and speak to counselors. Some reach out to administrators, but all of our staff members are so important because in recognizing a change in behavior or any significant problems in a student, that comes from the bus driver, the cafeteria worker, custodians. It comes from our teachers, our aides, and when that happens, you know, we are fortunate that through our HR department, there are many trainings that we go through annually that we have to watch those trainings and take tests on things that we recognize, things that we report. And I think that also, so all staff members are trained on certain events, but, you know.
Do we work closely with Piedmont Community Services?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
They're still inside this.
Yes, we have those counselors in our buildings. And we need additional counselors. You know, we've advertised, I keep looking for Miss Landon, I know she's somewhere right there. We've been advertising for additional psychologists, social workers, counselors. We still have a vacancy at Bank Vista at this time. So the qualifications from the Department of Education, there are certain qualifications to receive one of those roles. And we encourage people who are interested in that. But yes, Mr. Bradley, again, I think that we know, and I look to you as we know that it's important, and a lot of it is people have to reach out because sometimes there are no visible signs. But I know our counselors and administrators are equipped with information to provide to our community.
Mr. Bradley, just to talk about how this sometimes manifests itself on the legal side of things. If the mental health issues are manifesting themselves through chronic absenteeism, one of the things that the Code of Virginia requires is that obviously if you have a student who misses so many days, we have to bring a truancy case either against the student or the parents, depending on the age of the student. And those are always interesting cases because you don't know what's going to come out when you go into court. And quite often it turns out there is an underlying mental health issue either with the student or with the parent. And by bringing the truancy actions, it allows the judge to find that the child is either in need of services or in need of supervision in various aspects of CHINS orders. If those orders are entered, that unlocks additional resources and state funding through Piedmont Community Services, through the Department of Juvenile Justice. But it is something that we get at in a roundabout way sometimes through the truancy actions as well.
Well, I know one of my explanations when I was talking with this one, and actually when our staff, you mentioned psychologists, and I said, look, we've been advertising for these people. We just can't find these people to hire them to help us. So I told them, I said, look, if you know anybody, send them our way. You know? But, and I guess to piggyback out that and not to put any pressure on our new board members, students in particular, you know, you hear what we're trying to do, so you could be that advocate in the schools to help us out a little bit with this, you know. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other matters, Mr. Bradley?
No, just, you know, concerned about that. Really concerned because I've been approached, and you know, we need to get that information out to our community.
Thank you. Mrs. Whitlow.
Yes, sir. I just think that we're looking forward to the students to come back to school after their winter break and look forward to a great second semester. I think that it's awesome that Career Academy is able to offer more classes, and they are growing and giving students those opportunities for learning and seeing if they're interested in careers maybe in the future, as well as the students for the welding at PNHCC. I think that's a great avenue for them to be able to take and get into that the welding program at PNHCC, because I know it is a very busy program. But very proud of the students that are here as far as representing our schools in the sports and in robotics. And thanks to Boxley for being supportive to our school system.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Durden.
I do not have anything to add, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Durden. Mr. Hardy.
I would like to welcome our two student members to the board, and we are very glad that you're with us. Also, I would like to congratulate Mr. Martin and Mr. Rapley for being nominated or selected as the school board chairman and vice chairman. And also, I'd like to say, Mr. Alker, you did an awesome job this past year leading the board, and really appreciate what you have done for the board this year. And I'm sure that is the case for everyone. Just a couple of things I would like to say. I have also had the pleasure of attending all the schools in Henry County over the past 45 days or so, all but one, and that includes the Career Academy, the Governor's School, and the CCL. And I was very, very impressed with the school, sitting down with the students and the administrators and touring the schools, and I'm very, very proud of the school, the students in Henry County. I had the pleasure of attending the PTO meeting at Rich Acres and at Laurel Park over the past month or so, and I do not think they get the recognition that they really deserve sometimes, because they really do help our schools, and they do this on their own. They do it as a volunteer thing, and they take that time out of their schedule and so on to help our school, and many schools and many of the opportunities that our students would not have is done by the PTA, and that includes all the volunteer organizations. And my last thing I would like to say is it is indeed an honor to be recognized as the Teacher of the Year for your school. So my congratulations to all the Teachers of the Year this past school year. I was very, very proud to see that they appeared on the front page of the Marshall Bulletin on December the 20th for that recognition. And I'm sure Ms. Callaway will do an excellent job representing Henry County Public Schools in future competitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now I do think we are to our student school board members. If you would like to comment, we'll start with Mr. Goode.
I'm very excited to join the school board and offer some student input as we move forward, and I look forward to providing excellent input for our students. I'm very excited at the middle school, I'm at the high school, and I'm at Gov School. So I have lots of offerings and just talk to lots of people throughout the schools throughout the day.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cocker.
I would just like to say that I agree with Hunter. It's very exciting to have this new opportunity. I'm looking forward to showing like a younger perspective and like one who's actually going through the school system, like getting opinions from everybody. I might not have the middle school experience like Hunter does, but I have the Gov School and the high school too. I think it'll be very exciting this new year.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very happy to have you. Excited. Looking forward to your contributions, and thank you again for stepping up. So, looking forward to it. I will say one of the advantages of going last is I get to say that you all had really great points, and I want to also. Mr. Hardy just nailed it in so many different ways, but I want to thank Mr. Alker, I do joke that you had a COVID redshirt year, so that's how you got 3 years. But I want to say thank you for all you've done as our chair, and I want to thank the board for their support, and I'll do all I can to honor what you've given me. I want to thank and recognize those teachers of the year, those volunteers. I know that's also been a big point for Mrs. Durden, and encouraging volunteerism in our schools. And that's amazing, visiting every one of them in that time frame. So kudos to you, Mr. Hardy. I'm glad to try to keep up with you. With that said, I want to say I hope everyone had great holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Looking forward to having everybody back. And, it's been a while since we met, so I also have to say thank you for the support of Blood Drive, having memory of my Aunt Brenda. That went very well at Stanleytown. I want to thank, everybody that we have that has supported that, Mrs. Hatchett, Mr. Scott, everyone who's involved in that. Mrs. Largen, Stanleytown. And I also want to point out that we had in the, Mr. Hardy pointed out the last meeting, the Ridgeway Parade, and that was in Grand Marshal for the family of Mr. Zaire. And we had Mr. Gravely with the famous hat, and we had Mr. Hardy representing us, and I thought that went very well, and I thought that was a very fitting, touching tribute. I will conclude my remarks because I know I've gone too long, but I just want to say again how much I appreciate all of you, and thank you all, and how amazing it is when we recognize all those students that we had, like robotics and athletics as well. So with that said, I believe that concludes the matters from the board. So we'll do a quick reminder of dates. We have a public hearing scheduled for input on the 2024 budget priorities, and that is January the 19th. And then our next regular meeting is February 2nd with the motion we had earlier. That will be at 5:30. So, and then we tentatively are scheduled at 5 with the joint budget work session with the Board of Supervisors on February 28th. Of course, I will remind you, some of these do get changed every now and then due to weather, which I'm sure Mrs. Whitlow, from having to deal with transportation in the past, is very familiar with all the many last-minute moves we've had to make there. As was mentioned, we do have some conferences upcoming scheduled. The VSBA Capital Conference is scheduled in Richmond on the 30th, 31st. And I certainly encourage you to try to schedule meetings with your legislators around that time. They are well accustomed to seeing school board members and other superintendents, et cetera, around that time. There's also the new school board member and superintendent orientation. That's also the 31st, as well as new school board chair and vice chair orientation on the 31st. With that said, if we do not have anything else, we will need a motion to go into closed session. And the topics that we have currently slated are 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for the discussion of appointments and separations of personnel, as well as 2.2-3711A8 of the Code of Virginia for the discussion of pending legal matters. Any discussion or motion to that effect? Okay, we have a motion. Second. We have a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. With that said, we now go into closed session. And we'll be down here.